also shifting from being just delegating our task masters to being a coach to the team.
According to you, how much is important for learning?
We need to adapt, we need to then retune these concepts you have learned to suit your business needs. That is important. What are the challenges the business has? What is the vision the business has? What is the growth path for the business?
But what are the normal early mistakes HR people normally do?
Your career is not a sprint. It's a marathon.
What separates an average HR professional from truly highly impact person?
HR needs to shift out of the administrative mindset into a more strategic or more partnering mindset.
This is the only perception what people think about HR. Like they always support management.
The center of all this project is the employees, right? We always look at what better can we do for employees. Implementation would always be a hybrid working model.
Both win-win should be there.
Exactly. Giving the employees the freedom to explore and reach the objective.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the episode 33, the Leader Speak podcast. Today we have a HR head of one of the well-known organizations. She has more than 1 decade of experience. She worked with a multiple company, manufacturing, technology, and IT company. Presently, she working. She's a technical background. She done BTech in electronics, and after doing her technical engineering, she done an MBA, and she focused more on HR. That's what she felt after working 1 year. And she has so much of knowledge. We talk about career growth of the person. Then we talk about some myths and reality of the things. Then we talk about more HR as a business partner. And she given a lot of examples. She given a lot of tips also in this episode. Let's dive in, do the conversation with Amy. Hi Amy, thank you so much for coming for the episode 33, the Leader Speak podcast. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Pleasure to be a part of this.
Okay, let's begin your story, like to know about our audience, like where you're born, what's your family background, about the education. I can just elaborate, like.
Sure. So I'm basically from Kerala.
Okay.
Born and brought up
God's
there.
own country,
God's
right?
own country, from Kochi.
Okay.
Born and brought up there. Did my engineering as my graduation. I'm an electrical and electronics engineer in graduation. Post that, I worked with Robert Bosch for about a year. Then I went on to do my MBA with Loyola College in Chennai.
Okay.
That's where I chose HR as my stream, and then started my career with Mahindra & Mahindra,
Okay.
Alstom, and now Altair, which is a Siemens company.
Okay, great.
Family-wise, I come from a family of engineers, so that is why my graduation obviously became engineering.
Okay, good.
So my dad is an engineer, my mom is an engineer, my sister is an engineer.
Wow.
So
all engineering.
all
work.
engineers.
Oh, great.
So for graduation, there was no confusion. So it
Okay.
automatically went to engineering. I'm married. My husband works for Airbus, and I have 2 kids.
Wow.
7-year-old elder one and 3-year-old younger one, girl and a boy.
Wow.
So I get to experience both sides of the world. So
Great.
that's a pretty. So been in Bangalore now for the last 7+ years.
Okay.
Initially, I was in Chennai when I started, after my MBA and when I started my career. Before that, I was in Kerala.
Okay.
So that's pretty much about me.
That's great, yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, I'm very curious to know because you're the only person from last so many episodes we did, and your background is technical, engineering, right? Okay. I know what made you to choose like HR, because this is something different for me. I know MBA, so many guests have done, but MSW and all, but you are something different. You come a background from engineering, technical background. What made you to choose HR? In which something is like, you have something, no, that has triggered you, something happened, that's why you chosen HR. Or you started with operation, then you moved to HR, something like that.
No. So I did my engineering because, as I said, I come from a family of engineers.
Yeah,
so obviously engineering was my default graduation choice, that because you've grown up seeing them.
Yeah,
right?
got
So
it.
they were obviously your mentors, motivators,
Correct.
So I went into engineering. After engineering, I worked with Bosch for about a year. That's when I realized that, inside me, while, my family was technical and they've done their MTech after their BTechs, right? For me, something was that I felt that I wanted to pursue my career in management. So that was the only
So you
thing.
worked 1 year as a technical person.
As a technical
Okay,
person.
great. Okay, got it. Yeah.
But then I felt my interest was more inclined towards management.
Okay.
So that's when I decided that I don't want to do an MTech. I want to do an MBA. So that time there was no concept of HR or marketing or anything. I just wanted to do management.
Management,
You know,
yeah.
that's what that was my postgraduate aspiration. So I went on to do my MBA in it. And when you start your MBA, first year you mostly have a lot of subjects, right? You have finance, you have operations, you have HR, you have marketing subjects. So you do everything in your first year. So out of all the subjects that I learned in my first year, what struck me or what had my interest was HR subjects. So I found that I was enjoying learning the HR subjects.
Okay.
So then I wanted to learn more about HR, because in the first year you just learn the human resources management. That's a generic one in what you learn. And then I said, okay, let me do my summer internship in HR. So I went to do my summer internship with SAP, a brilliant company to start with. That gave me a lot of exposure to what actually HR is. What happens practically in the corporate world. And then when I came back second year for my MBA, I was sure that I wanted to build my career in HR. So then my second
Okay.
year, all my electives were HR electives, what I took,
Okay.
because I was sure that if there is an HR elective, that is my preference. And then my secondary would be, marketing or, whatever is other areas of interest. So that's when I started build. So I fell in love with the subject. I fell in love with the concepts. It was interesting to see the different concepts and, how humans think, how organizations are structured, what goes beneath all the organizations we see. So that's how I started, and that's how I decided that, so by the time placements came, I was sure I want to
Okay.
get placed only in a HR field.
only.
Yes.
Okay.
So I sat, in fact, only for companies, that came with an HR opportunity. So that's how the transition happened
Okay,
to HR.
great. Okay, you started again HR in Bosch only, or you different?
No, so in Bosch, I was in a pure technical field.
Technical, okay. Then
I did my
after
MBA, and then Mahindra came for campus placement
Okay.
there.
That time you.
So yes, that's how I got.
The Mahindra Electric, right?
No, so it's Mahindra and Mahindra, the automotive one. And I
Okay.
worked in electric for a brief period, but otherwise the placement company was Mahindra and Mahindra.
Okay, great. Acha, let's say for someone want to start in career in HR, where they should begin?
Okay.
What is your what is your advice for them?
So I think for anybody who aspires to become an HR professional, I think one most important aspect is that they need to have their HR basics right. So when I say HR basics, it's as simple as you need to know. So I hear a lot of people telling me that, I'm brilliant, dealing with people. I like interacting with people. That is one aspect of HR.
Okay, got it.
But there are much more to it, right? So the most important, and especially for a fresher who comes in, it is important that you understand what is HR basics, what are the labor codes, right? What labor codes are applicable in an organization. You don't have to be knowing, but you need to have the basics. What is a gratuity act? What is a maternity benefit, right? So the basics of HR should be known to them. How is an organization, the basics what you learn in college. That is one thing, and secondly is understanding how an organization functions, because more and more HR is becoming a business partner. So you need to know how the business is functioning. So how does an organization, how is it structured? How is it functioning? What is revenue? What is profit? Now the basics of how an organization runs, you need to be aware of. That is very important for an HR professional who wants to start their career in HR.
Okay.
Second thing I say is that while we say interacting with people, which is only a part of HR, right? But HR is much more than that. It also includes business acumen. It also includes data-driven decision making. It also includes influencing skills, right? These are also skills an HR professional needs. So you need to groom yourself on these aspects also. Are you able to draw conclusions out of data? Are you able to? Are you comfortable handling data in the first place? Right. So these are the second thing, the second aspect you need to work on if you want to be an HR professional. Third, I think, is the learning agility and the willingness to learn. That's quite important, right? So grab the opportunity that comes for you, right? And then learn your fullest in that particular space. It can be HR operations, it can be talent acquisition, it can be HR generalist, it can be any COE. It's fine, but grab the opportunity, learn to your maximum in that particular field. You can keep switching, moving to other areas. But it's important you show that learning agility, because the world we are in today, everything is changing so drastically, right? We don't know what is going to stay, relevant in the next 5 years, 10 years. So it's important that we are also learning continuously, and we are in that mindset to learn continuously. So I think that is the third aspect, and learning agility is very important for HR professionals. Now the labor codes have changed,
Correct.
right? You need to know so nobody's now going to come and teach you in a classroom what is labor code, right? You need to attend conferences, attend seminars, read up on internet, and then keep yourself updated. That's quite important.
I think you mentioned learning, right?
Yeah.
According to you, how much is important for learning?
So for me, learning comes from it is just not classroom trainings all the time. Okay, so it's a mentality, the willingness to learn that matters.
Okay.
Now, I might be a fresher, I might be somebody who has 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years of experience, but the mindset to learn needs to continue. The moment we stop learning, right, we will not grow afterwards.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's important. So the learning can happen on the job, right? So when I today work, I learn a lot of things, in my day-to-day work. I might also learn from the people who are much more younger to me, from the Gen Zs, the interns in my team. I learn a lot of things, the way they function. They're probably sometimes more technologically advanced than me, right? Sometimes I learn to use the AI tools in different ways from the young people. So it's important that we are open to learning.
And do you think that formal education in HR is enough, or else they should focus, the candidate should focus on something else?
So the formal education in HR is a starting point. So
It's more into theoretically.
yes.
Okay.
So the theoretical starting point is a formal education, right? You need to know the basics. What is an organizational design? What are the different structures of organization? What is a metrics organization? These are all
Maybe
the theory
main
concepts.
objective of HR.
Exactly,
Okay,
right?
good.
What is a performance management?
Okay.
What is a balanced scorecard? These are all theoretical
Formal,
aspects
education,
of
yeah,
HR,
okay.
which you need to be aware of. But when it comes to corporate, there are much more than these theoretical aspects, right? You might find challenges in implementing some of these things in the way our business works. Our business might be structured differently. Our objectives and vision of the business might be different. The kind of employees we might have is, it might be different. So we need to adapt. We need to then retune these concepts you have learned to suit your business needs. That is important. So I think the foundation is quite important. So it is not that without those foundations, it's like a finance professional. Can they become somebody who does accounting or doing finance without knowing how to read balance sheets, or without knowing how to do the basics of accounting? So similarly, that basics of HR is quite important, from giving you the foundation. The rest you build on it.
Great. Yeah, but okay, when you start your career, and what are the mistakes normally? Okay, earliest stage of their things, they do mistakes. Do you anything to know, you identify those mistakes when they started their career earlier? What are the mistakes normally people do? Like, if you have some experience from your end, you can share with the examples or things, then they'll get more idea of that one.
Yeah.
I think, as you mentioned rightly, that definitely there are a lot of things going to happen. But what are the normal early mistakes HR people normally do?
So, with respect to HR, I think the main mistake, what I see, or in fact, probably I also thought about it when I was in the early stages of my career, is, and I think I realized it a little after, maybe 6-7 years after I started my career, is your career is not a sprint; it's a marathon, right? So many times, what happens is we see, hey, my batchmate has got so much CTC, I have not reached there yet, or my batchmate is working in this fancy company and they have so many things. So ideally, long run, all this kind of catches up. So I think when we start and any fresher, when we start our career, be it in HR or any field, I think the primary objective, the primary focus should be on learning as much as possible. Because you're like a sponge when you start your career. You're willing to absorb everything, right? So that phase of your career, when you don't have any baggage, you are fresh, you're new, you have learned theories from your college, and then you have come to the corporate world. Learn as much as possible from everybody around you, right? It can be your stakeholders, it can be your manager, it can be your peers. It's important you have that mindset for learning, right? Money, all the other things will fall in place eventually.
Yeah, got it. Got it. But is it, what do you say, like when you start your career, definitely now after 11, 12 years, you reach in a different stage. Now you're in a HR head of the organization. Uh, Definitely there was some mentor was there earlier, or some guide, or someone, as you mentioned, peers and all. Do you have any idea that some that in your mind, okay, I did something like this and they helped me, the mentor has helped me to do something like this, that has changed my prospect, or that changed my life, that I'm reached so fast in my life? Something you want to share?
Yes. So I think one thing I've been very fortunate is that I have had some amazing mentors all through my career.
That's very, very critical in the profession.
Absolutely,
So
right.
I know it's very important.
It's a very important thing in your journey, and I'm very grateful for that, so that they have been mentoring me, they have been. And so whenever, even today, whenever I'm stuck in a crossway, I kind of reach out to one of them, right, and then ask them, what do you think, this is what I think, is that is that right, do you have another perspective? So they've always been. So that is a kind, I think everybody in any of the professional career, it's always good to have a mentor, somebody you can look up to, right? And that can be based on what you want the mentoring on. Sometimes you want to have somebody mentor you in the field of work you're doing. Maybe your aspiration is to do something else, right? So you want somebody to mentor you to reach there. Or maybe you're already good, you just want somebody to mentor you with respect to leadership and your executive presence and things like that. So it's important what you want to be mentored on. So I have been grateful that I have had amazing mentors in my journey. And of course, so whenever I had, like, for example, if you look at my career, I have worked in diverse industries, right? So I have first worked in automotive, then I moved to a railway transport, and then to a software product. So initially I was confused, is it wise to, do that industry switch, or is it always better to continue being as an HR in one industry throughout, right? And then I have gone back and taken advice from my mentors to say, what do you think, right? Is that the right move? And always they have given me the right choice. And it's always good to have that exposure, because in different industries, you have different kind of challenges, different kind of employees. So you as an HR professional gets groomed, you understand the challenges, you understand what happens in some of these industries. So that is one, place where the mentors have helped me. So I still remember, like, when you start your career, right, you're very excited because you've become an HR, generalist, and that's how you start your career. And I remember once, one of my mentors, who's also one of my ex-managers, told me that, Amy, I know you're excited, but, hold on, right? Don't be so fast,
Okay.
right? It's good that you just pause, right? And then let things also move at its pace, right? So that's a reminder, that sometimes that we are so excited for things to happen, we sometimes constantly push ourselves, but it's sometimes also good to just hold back and, just take a step back and also then look at things. So these mentors have always helped me in my journey whenever, I have been in crossways, roadblocks, and I've always gone back to these mentors, and they've been extremely helpful. So yes.
Okay. But how do you identify mentors? Let's say when the fresher come as a starting point in the organization, how do he or she has to identify the right mentor?
Correct. So as I said, we as an individual, you need to know what is it that you're looking for mentoring in. That's very important.
Okay, got
Right?
it.
Now, for me, I was sure that I wanted somebody who can mentor me in the HR domain. That's what I was looking at, right? Somebody who can help me build my career in HR business partnering.
Maybe in the same organization or any other
Any
okay.
outside
But
organization.
it should be HR domain.
Exactly,
Okay, got it.
right? So to a stage that when I was interviewing with other companies, I would go back and ask the mentor, is it the right choice, right? Or do you think I should not join? So in fact, when I get bigger roles, and sometimes you have a self-doubt, can I take this up, right? And I would go back to my mentor and ask, hey, do you think I should take this up? And they've been saying, yes, you should. If you don't take it up now, when will you take it up, right? So it's important as an individual, as a person, you need to know what is it that you need to get mentored in. It can be, in your own work domain, or it can be an aspiration you want to be. Like, I have had people who came and told me that I am today a development person, right? I want to move to a product manager role. So I need somebody who can mentor me in that journey to become a product manager, right? So then the person needs to identify somebody who can help them in that journey from here to there, right? It can be somebody who is already doing a product manager role, or somebody who has transitioned from a development to a product manager role, doesn't matter. So The first is identify what is the mentorship you need, which area do you need the mentorship, and then it is about identifying the people, right? Now, I have worked with somebody, I have seen a leader work, right? Observe them. Look to see, is this somebody you look up to? That's very important. If you think the person is somebody you look up to, who can guide you, whom you think can add value to you, right? Then once you're sure of that, approach them. Ask them, can you be my mentor? Can you help me? These are some of the things, areas I want help in, right? And then have that journey begin.
From your experience, what separates an average HR professional from a truly highly impact person?
So I think the first is business acumen.
Okay.
It's very important to know what is the business you're supporting, what are the priorities for that business, what are the challenges they face, what are the kind of employees we have in the business. So it's very important to understand the business part. What is the revenue of the business, what is the revenue get generated from, who are the main customers. So the concept of you should be very clear of what is, because that's when you add value, right? You are able to understand the business, you can be a better partner to them. You're able to sit with the business head or the leader of the business and talk to them, saying that, hey, I know these are the challenges, right? I think this is what we can do. Right? So I think business acumen is one aspect which I will talk about. Second aspect is data-driven decision making. So it's very important that while as HR, right, we have intuitions, we might understand certain things. It's very important to back it up with data. So, and HR has a lot of data available, right?
Yeah.
You have attrition data, you have the joining data, you have feedbacks, what you get, the engagement scores. So it's very important to dive down deep and gather insights from the data and have your conversations based on the data. So I think that is the second most important aspect. Third aspect which I feel is boldness.
Okay.
So it is about so you are a partner to the business, right? It is important that you're also the guardian of fairness, and parity and all of that. So it's important that if you see, even from the business side, if you see something that is not fair, if you think there is a great high performing leader, but you feel the managerial style is not okay, right? It's about having those discussions with the business to say, hey, while I know why you're saying this, I don't feel this is the right thing to do. So I think that boldness is quite important. Sometimes, calling out or talking about things you feel is not right, even if the business is doing it, right? And I think that is quite important for an HR professional. So I think these are the top three things I see. One is understanding your business. Second is having a conversations basis data, and having the boldness to call out, when you see something that is not right or that is not fair, because you are the guardian. Yeah. You are there to ensure that there is fairness and parity in the organization.
Amazing. So you mentioned business partners, okay? How can HR professional evolve into business partner rather than as a functional person?
So HR, the business partners is again one section of HR. So you still have a talent acquisition team. You will still have the HR operations team. Okay. You will still have the COEs, which create the processes of performance management or talent, different COEs, and then you have the HR business partnering team. So it's the entire people coming together to form the HR function. Mm-hmm. So HR business partnering is essentially working alongside business, partnering with business to see how can HR, help build the business better. So it can be, for example, there is a ramp up that's happening, right? The business has decided to probably something which is outsourced, they want to bring in all in-house. They might have a requirement to hire, say, 200 people, right? So it's about sitting with the business saying, okay, I understand. What are these 200 people going to do? Why are we hiring them inside, right? Is it a job that can still be outsourced? If we need to identify what are the kind of skill set we need, how do we manage to do the hiring? Are we setting up new teams? Because then you need to have the leaders hired first and then you hire the team below, right? You don't do it upside down. So what are the first few positions you want to open, and then close those positions, and then you go to the remaining positions. So how do you phase it out, the recruitment? Does the internal TA team has the capability of doing these positions? What are the timelines available, or do we go to external partners? So it is sitting alongside the business, helping them plan this out. So that is the partnering we do. So this is just with respect to hiring. For any other things, you have a high performer, right? So it's about identifying who are your high performers in your team. What are the critical roles in your team? Are the critical roles being staffed by the right people, right? And if they are staffed by the right people, do you have a succession plan for them in place, right? Tomorrow, if this person leaves, who is going to hold that position? Do you have to run to the market to get a replacement? Or do you have somebody internally available who can take up that position, right? If you have somebody internally available, is that person ready now? Or is that person going to be ready, need some time to be ready, right? In that case, what kind of trainings or what kind of capability building do we have to give to this person? So it's about, that is the partnering we refer to. So helping business drive their strategy, drive their goals by partnering with them on the HR aspects. So it can be, your high potentials, your low potentials, low performers, how do you manage them? It can be coaching the managers, because one of the major stakeholders in this entire thing is managers, right?
Yeah.
Because they are the ones who drive the teams. The employees in and out report into the managers. They interact with the managers. It's important your managers are mature enough, right? They know how to handle the teams. So sometimes people are very good technically, but when it comes to management, when it comes to leading a team, they might need a little bit of coaching. They might need a little bit of
handling people,
yeah. Right? They might need some kind of help there. Yeah. So that is the partnering we're referring to. So working alongside business, closely with business to enable them in their journey.
Okay, you mean to that this has evolved from the last couple of years?
Yes.
That only not on the support function.
Yes.
They more into business partners.
Exactly.
Right? Okay.
Exactly.
Now, when you mentioning that, okay, what mindset shifts are required to grow in HR?
Okay. So I think one major aspect is, I think HR needs to shift out of the administrative mindset,
okay,
into more strategic or more partnering mindset. So when I say administrative mindset, what I mean is, for example, I remember, like, probably when I started my career, right, the HR used to send birthday mailers every day morning.
Birthday, okay.
Right? Now, today that is something an AI can do. You can just have it automated in the entire system, right? It's an automation that can work. So I think that mindset shift needs to happen to say that, while it is great to wish people on their birthday, is it an HR's primary job to send birthday mailers, right? I mean, this is my personal opinion.
Okay, got it.
And or similarly, right, while it is great to have engagement, engagement in organization is not just fun at work activities like your Diwali celebration or Rangoli celebration, or it's only an aspect of engagement. It is important. So sometimes we shrink ourselves to that aspect of engagement to say how many celebrations have I done, right? So I think that we need to come out of that to say it is no longer sending birthday emailers or doing those celebrations. HR is much more than that, right? So I think that is a mindset shift that needs to happen, and as HR we consciously need to do that. That we need to come. Sometimes people might have expectations that you do that, but sometimes we have to say, my primary role is not this. My primary role is this, right? While I can probably have a team enabled, where like a lot of the organizations now, they have a fun at work team, where people come together. You have representatives from everywhere which comes together. They plan activities, right? HR probably manages a budget part or stuff like that. So, but we can't be the primary driver, because you spend a lot of your effort and energy here, right? And then you don't have time to do the partnering, the business partnering side. So I think that's a mindset shift that is required to move out of the administrative.
Not only administrative, you need to be more partnering.
Yes.
Now we'll talk about some myths of HR. Okay.
Okay.
And there are many perception about HR, like HR is only about hiring and firing.
Yes.
And what are some common myths you have encountered like when you started?
Yeah, so I think the major myths, what you said is true. HR is all about just hiring and firing, but that's what people see,
Correct.
right? People see, the HR as a recruitment team. It's probably the talent acquisition team that they see, and then they see you maybe during the exit time, right? But the in between journey, right, that I don't know, people probably don't realize it. There's much more that HR does, right? As I said, talent management, right, organizational design. When it comes to, again, payroll is again something, and another aspect what employees see of HR. So there are career planning, career succession planning of employees. So capability building. So there are a lot of other phases in HR which is there, which probably many times employees see, or people see HR only as the people who hire and fire. So I think that is one myth. I think the other one is, again, as I said, no, HR is all about, just if I'm good at interacting with people, no, I'm a great HR person. But again, as I said, no, HR is just not about interacting with people. There's much more to HR, right? It's about business acumen, it's about data-driven decision making, it's about influencing skills. So there is a lot more other buckets to HR than just interacting with people,
People.
right?
Yeah.
I think another one what people feel is that HR is always on the side of management,
Yeah.
right? It's
This
always
is one of the
Yes.
major, I think
Yeah.
so, because I know so many HR people, and this is the only perception what people think about HR. Like they always support management. Yeah, that's one of the myth.
Correct.
What I'm-
Again, it's a myth. Like I think last,
Do you have any experience in your life? Okay, this kind of perception has changed towards a employee point of view, something like that.
so
Or someone has done like you. Can I take an example and you have done something in your
Yeah.
experience?
So whenever there is a change, right? Change is always difficult,
Yeah.
right? It's not easy. So, and especially when the change is around people or employees, right? Usually the one who communicates that is usually through HR it comes. So they feel HR is always siding the management. But
Correct.
what I can say is that my last 10, 11 years of experience, what I've seen is that any HR project we have taken up, right? We've taken up multiple projects, across different companies. The center of all this project is the employees, right? We always look at what better can we do for employees. Of course, we need to balance employees and organization. It's
Absolutely,
both.
yeah. That's very
right?
both win-win should be there. yeah.
Exactly, right? So we can't just give everything to employees and then say that then the organization will go for a tour.
Correct.
So I think it's always a balance between both. But always, HR is always one representing employees in all the forums, talking from both aspects, right? But typically when the communication comes, right, when we communicate, I think people feel, oh, they have only heard the management side. But that's never the case. So HR is always a mediator between both these employees and the management. But we need to ensure that in that process, we do what is best for both. We need to strike a balance for employees and for management. So I think that's the other myth what I've seen.
Okay, but how do you manage those kind of things? Like definitely when you talk about both side win-win, okay, it's very difficult to convey the message to one of them. Okay, how do you manage those things? Like how do you take those people into confidence? Like,
Yeah, so I think one thing is it's very important to explain to them the logic why it is done. Certain things are done. So many
Okay.
times what happens is, I think communication is very key in HR. So which means that if there is a change happening, it is important to say why that change has happened, what was the thought process, how have we gone about the process, and what is the result of it, right? When we talk only about result is when employees have a feeling that, okay, why, because they're not aware of the things that have gone in the background. So it's important that whenever we do a change management, we have this entire communication process. So, I think in one of the organizations where we had gone for a change in titles of employees.
okay,
So, employees, because everybody likes to be called a manager, right? And we were changing some of them into engineers because we were a technical organization. So when employees were like, why is it happening? I want to be called as a manager, right? So then we had to go back and tell them, say the logic is that we are going to focus more on the engineering capability, what all of you have, right? And the first thing for that is that the titling, the culture needs to be around the fact that we are technical people, right? And we need to start nourishing our technical capability, right? So we explained the logic and we told all of them, see, when you finished your 12th, all of you wanted to be engineers, right? You wanted to be called engineers. All of you went for your engineering degree, right? They become engineers. You've joined, you want to be called managers. So you're primarily in here because you're engineers, right? And hence it's important for us to go back. That's it. We are all engineers in the first place. And we are here for engineering work, right? So that's the logic. So I think the communication process is quite important whenever we do a change, so that employees see both aspects. Okay, this is the logic, this is the background, that is why this change has happened. But again, right, still there are always two sides to a coin, right? Employees might still feel that they could have done, but it's important for us to communicate.
Correct. Yeah, I understand. Like, it's very important. Like, you should be communicated. It's for communication in such a way that people should understand what you want to achieve.
Correct.
Yeah, I understand. Like, yeah, as you mentioned, HR, there are more to administration or business partner. You need to communicate. You need to be work with both the management as well as employee. Now, what does typically day in HR actually look like behind this scene?
Okay, interesting.
But I understand
question.
all these things. Told agree, but
it also depends on what kind of role you are in HR, how your day looks like. Like, for example, if it is a talent acquisition role, your day in and day out, you would be busy understanding the roles that you have open, working with the managers to understand what kind of skill set are you looking for, what kind of experience are you looking for, what is the budget available for you, and then sourcing those candidates. Selling your company, they have a big role of selling the company to the candidates, right? Because especially if it is a B2B company, right? A lot of people would not have heard about the B2B companies.
Correct,
you hear B2C companies because you see them on the shopping in the shopping supermarket, you see them,
Correct.
right? But B2B companies, people don't hear a lot many times. So if your first job is selling your company, why is it that they can consider this company? It's about interacting with the candidates. Again, interviews happen, HR interviews can happen. Then deciding the basis the competency, basis what the candidate brings to the table, basis the budget we have. Then placing the candidate, and then rolling out offers, keeping them warm because in India you have notice period, so keeping them warm till the time they join. That's the typical talent acquisition thing. If it is an HR operations, their day-to-day life is all about ensuring that things are in place. They are the backbone of the HR function, right? Ensuring that
HR operations,
right?
Okay.
Because they are responsible. For example, a candidate joins the organization, you need to ensure you have all the documentation in place. Be it their ID cards, their previous work experience certificates, all of that needs to be checked and stored properly. To ensure that the data is kept confident, this data is not leaked anywhere. So all the joining formalities has to be done. They are mapped rightly in the organization. So the statutory and compliance part, right? You need to adhere to all the government statutory regulations that is there. So their day-to-day job, it's a very back-end job. Probably they're not seen many times out there, but that's their they run that entire HR function, right? Ensuring that people's profiles are maintained and it is kept clean. Also generating letters when people leave, experience letters have to be done. So there's a lot of work that happens in the HR operations side. For a business partner, it's more about working alongside business, right? So it's about, as I said, understanding how is the business heading, what are the challenges they face, what can we do to ensure that we help the business. It can be about capability building. Sometimes they might say that I have great people, but to give them a little bit of leadership training, a little bit of communication training, so you understand what is the challenge they have, and then you kind of have trainings available for that. It can be about coaching managers, sometimes managers have a low performer in their team. They don't know what to do with them, right? They don't know how to pass on that message. So they might have a very high performer in the team. They don't know how to keep them motivated, right? So it's about working alongside managers to say, what can we do, right, better? It is about performance management. It's about talent management. As I said, ensuring that we reward your high performers. It's about also ensuring that we help develop the people who are not up to the mark, right? Sometimes you have a person put in the wrong job, right? And the person might not be meeting the expectations you have. In that case, what do we do? Can we move them around to something else, right? Or maybe the person is doing their best, but they don't understand what your expectations are. So then it's about setting those expectations with the person. So working alongside managers to handle some of these things, right? Ensure that managers are aware that they need to give a constructive feedback. How do they do it? So these are the other aspects. And then employees might have questions on what happens to my career. I didn't get promoted. What do I do? Right? Sometimes you have to route them to the right people. Sometimes you'll have to tell employees that you are responsible for your career, right? And that's one thing I strongly believe that every individual is responsible for their career.
100%.
Right? So you need to figure out what is it that you want to do. It can be moving laterally to another role. It can be maybe moving, up. But it's important that So these are the this is what a normal day, and then of course looking at the metrics, right? Looking at the data, right? How is the attrition data looking? How is the joining looking at? How is the people tenured? What is their engagement scores looking like? What can we do better? So this is what a typical HR business partnering day looks like.
Okay. When the COVID happened, there is all the people, like, model change for the corporates, right?
Correct.
Apart from manufacturing industries, like work from home concept. Now it's easy become, like now people are work at 2 days or 3 days of work, they come to office. Now it's become a hybrid. Now how the shift has happened, and what is the important role of HR now? It's very like how you manage that.
Yeah, interesting question. So I think a lot of companies went to hybrid. A lot of them are coming back now to 5 days back.
Is it?
Yes, a lot of companies are coming back to having employees come in all 5 days.
Full-fledged now.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
So many employees who said that you can go back and work remote.
Okay.
Are now calling their employees back. Right? So I think the decision between hybrid, work from office 5 days, or a complete remote working is completely a business decision basis what works for the respective business. The reason being that sometimes when you have your entire team here and you have a team which needs to work on labs or equipments or things, that it makes sense to have people coming into office. It's very important. Maybe in a organization which is like more like where you have global, it's very globally situated, right? Maybe working from remote is okay for the organization. Some organizations, though they're global, they still want people to come in hybrid at least 2 to 3 days a week.
Okay.
So the call of which option to choose, right? It's now a decision along with the business to see what works for your company.
Okay.
However, having said that, personally, my preference and my recommendation would always be a hybrid working model.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
The reason being that I feel that 2 to 3 days in the office, right? There is a different. It's important that the sense of belongingness is built. So you have a new person who comes in. If the person is completely remote, right, sitting at home and working, they don't randomly have a conversation with their colleagues or managers, right? You don't have your coffee chats, you don't have your lunch conversations, right? You just do your work and then you talk for your work and you log out, right? The sense of belongingness, the culture of the organization does not get transferred. The person is not able to understand how the organization is built. So hence it is important that while hybrid of course gives you the flexibility, it's also important that you come in 2 to 3 days, so that you understand how the organization is. You get the belongingness to the organization. You have those coffee chats, you have those lunch conversations. When you come together, you collaborate better, right? Otherwise, you have to have a Teams meeting set up with a person and then, you talk to them about the topic. Otherwise, I know you, you know me. We might just pick up a phone and talk to each other. We might just see in the office, we sit next to each other. We might just talk over there. So the collaboration increases when you're in office. So hence, personally, my recommendation is always a hybrid working model where 2 to 3 days, if employees are in office, they come together, they collaborate.
But yeah, I agree on what you're talking about. Like couple of people told, like, when they work from home, the full-fledged, like not on a hybrid model, that time the performance is high level. Is it same thing now also when it comes to hybrid, or there is a changes?
So,
and what is the reason that performance is high when they have work from home?
It's because you don't take a break.
Right? Here they take chai break, coffee break.
Exactly.
Okay,
you are 9 o'clock, you are in front of your laptop, right?
And
You don't have a cut-off time, right? You continue working till the time everything gets over. You log off by 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. It's not, in fact, it's not good for the individual also. You need to know,
continue working,
yes,
yeah.
you need to have yourself come out of the work environment at times, right? And that's why I said that some of these informal conversations are important, from an organizational perspective. The only thing you're doing otherwise is just being in front of your laptop and working and attending meetings and going back to your work, right? So while, yeah, I think there was a studies that came out during COVID that the productivity went up,
yeah.
and then but I think there was also price what the organizations were paying for the increased productivity was also the fact that decreased collaboration, right? Decreased sense of belongingness. New joiners unable to adopt quickly to the organization. They were not able to settle down as much. So then organizations also realized that it's important to have them come into office. So while some said hybrid, some said come all 5 days,
Correct.
right? And in fact, I was talking to one of my colleagues, from another company. They were saying that when we moved from a 3-day to 4-day, right, there was attrition that happened because the
3 days to 4 days,
4
okay,
days,
okay.
right? There was an attrition that happened because of course people wanted more flexibility. They didn't want to come in 4 days and all of that. But they were like, it's okay. But the gain what we got from doing that shift is much more than the attrition.
Okay.
So that's fine. We were okay with that attrition that happened because we got more gain out of it, right? So then, tomorrow we might even think of making from 4 days to 5 days, because the more collaboration, more productivity is also. It's not that when you come into office, the productivity is reduced, right? You still work. See, 1 or 2 days you might have long chai and coffee and all, but then you end up working because you collaborate better.
Absolutely, yeah.
Otherwise, the things move faster.
Correct.
Right? So hence, a lot of organizations now also feel that it's important to have people come into office, at least on a hybrid model.
Okay, then I got it. Now, what happened? Now, what are the biggest challenges in managing these teams, like hybrid teams?
So, hybrid teams, there is still less challenge because of the fact that you still see them 3 days a week or 2 days a week, right? It's probably other 2 days, so it's fine, right? And it's also work on trust. The major challenge will come in complete remote teams because you don't see them at all, right? And as a manager, so the managers need to take a conscious effort to stay connected to these teams, right? To keep them, and because you don't know, are they happy, are they not happy? Sometimes employees are also disconnected. They don't know because you always can't, keep everything in your head and communicate, right? So that's why managers have a bigger responsibility to ensure that they do a structured engagement, right? They need to ensure that the messages are passed through, communication happens top down, the expectations are passed through, the feedback is given. So everything needs to be structured and done when it is a remote work style, right? So you need to ensure that the employee is connected to you, right? And the employee is not lost in the entire scheme of things. So that is very important in remote.
But when you talk about, it's very important to engage with the remote teams, right? How do you engage? What are the things you focus on engage with these people?
Right. So what a lot of companies do is that, especially if they're full remote, they say Friday afternoons is only for informal connect. So they all come together on a Friday afternoon, right? And then they have their cameras turned on. They just talk informal stuff. They don't have, any formal official stuff.
Every weekend?
Every week. Right? So again,
Depends
varies from team to
okay.
team. Some do it, bi-weekly. Some do it once in a month. But they have the time they set apart, right? And they say we just talk.
The
right?
main purpose is engagement.
Engage with each other, connect with each other, right? They say that again, burnout is a big thing when you do complete remote, right? So a lot of companies say that you will, when you book a meeting, you don't do from 11:30 to 12. You do 11:30 to 11:55. You purposefully leave that 5 minutes there because typically next meeting starts at 12, right?
Okay.
So the employee is able to take that 5-minute break, right? So as the burnout is going to be high for the employee, you don't realize it in the beginning, but over a period of time, right, the burnout becomes quite high.
Okay, you mentioned a couple of times culture, okay? Definitely there will be different in a culture when you talk about remote team or hybrid team. How you balance those things like?
See, culture to me is for a company.
Yeah.
Ideally, right? But again, what happens is culture also depends on every manager, what you are also doing in the respective teams. So basically culture is what people do when they're not being observed.
Okay.
Right? When I observe you, you might be very nice, very proactive, very, accountable, responsible, etc. Right? But is that how you are even when you are not being observed? So that is for me culture, right? So when you are in a hybrid environment, when you are there physically, right, you see each other. I see how you behave, you see how I behave, right? So there's an observation that happens. In a remote setup, that rarely happens because I don't, apart from probably the official conversations, I don't observe you, I don't get the opportunity to observe.
Correct.
Right? Starting from a fresher, right, a lot of them learn by observing others, right? So while of course culture can be built in a remote company, right, but it takes effort, it takes conscious effort to build it. You will have to ensure that is communication is done to those new joiners. They are able to adjust to the ways of working. They feel they are welcomed. They feel there is a belongingness. That has to be, that effort needs to be taken to have it felt. That is important. So it's not impossible to have a remote work. A lot of organizations are extremely successful working remotely,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
It is just that we need to take the conscious effort to have it done.
Good. Then where do you feel the manager fall down when it's come to people management?
Okay. So managers have a very crucial role to play because the teams look up to them. And they're like the shepherd, who is going to guide the sheep. Right now, the role of managers are changing quite a bit, moving from, delegation to just telling them what needs to be done. It's shifting from that to being coaches. Okay. Managers expected to coach the team members.
Correct.
It is just not telling them, hey, do A, B, C, D, right? The role is shifting to say that this is the end goal, what I want. Now you please work towards it, right? Giving the employees the freedom to explore and reach the objective. So where it falls down is when managers just become taskmasters, right?
Okay.
When you just say A, B, C, D to be done, right? You don't make them feel empowered. You don't make them feel accountable, right? Because you tell them A, B, C, D to be done, right? Instead, you tell them, you know what, this is the end objective, right? What do you think we can do? Empower the team members to, figure out a way, right? Come up with options, make mistakes, right? That's when the team also feels empowered. They feel like, okay, I have, my voice has value, right? That's what is important. Second place where managers sometimes fall is when they fail to give feedback, right? If you give feedback once in a year, right, when the final appraisal happens, that's not feedback. That's a surprise to the employee, right?
And then what is the routine normally?
It has to be continuous feedback.
So continuous sense like maybe monthly ones, weekly ones, or
No,
depends on the...
It depends on when it is required, it needs to be given.
Okay.
So there is no fixed time saying every month or every quarter.
I understand. When it's required, you have to be...
give it
it
immediately.
should be more constructive feedback.
And constructive feedback,
right.
right? It shouldn't be targeting the person.
Correct.
It's targeting the situation. What happened? It can be good feedback and positive feedback. It can be development feedback. Both of it, right? Let it happen immediately, timely, and addressing the situation. Because the moment the manager says, you did it, you did not do this, the employee shuts, right? Because it's human nature. We don't like to be, to be blamed, right? But the moment we say that, this situation happened, this was not delivered on time, what can we do better? What do you think you could have done better? Then it come into conversation, right? So it's important that managers shift from the traditional style of once in a year or twice in a year feedback to a continuous feedback, right? So many times managers shy away, especially from giving a development feedback, because we all want to be nice to others, right? But what happens later is that you reach a point where you can't, take it anymore, and the manager is like, I can't deal with this. I want the person out of the organization. And then we ask, have you given the person the feedback? Have you told the person, right? Then they're like, no, not really. That's not fair to the individual, right? So maybe a feedback when something was not working right in the beginning would have helped the employee also to streamline, right? And to come to the right route. Maybe the employee wasn't aware of your expectations, right? That is the other second mistake managers do. is not giving the proper feedback, constructive feedback at the right time.
Yeah, that's very rightly you mentioned, because recently I learned these things like normally the high successful people or leaders, um, three things they don't do. Okay, the number one is no blame and no excuse. Second one, and third one would be no justification. These are related to the topic what we're discussing. I thought just share with you that one.
Correct. Thank you.
And if focus on those three things, definitely
Absolutely.
the environment, the culture of the organization as a leader
Correct.
is going to change a lot.
Absolutely.
That's what I understand.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, you have two kids, and you are there more than one decade of experience in HR. As a woman, how do you manage as a HR professional?
Yes.
Or I think you work hybrid or still
Yeah,
5 days a
it's
week?
hybrid now.
Okay, but how do you managing that?
Yeah.
Because I know so many HR people, especially HR, almost all women's only.
Yeah.
Majority I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I want to know from you that how do you manage yourself, as a personal or a professional
Yeah.
life?
So I think this would be for all the women professionals, not just for HR. I think one thing I've learned over the last 12 years is that when you are especially a mom and a working professional, I think three things is what I would say. One is you can't be 100% perfect, right?
Yeah.
That is important. I mean, this is my personal opinion.
Got it.
You might have to, somewhere let go of certain things, right?
Okay.
And there it is very important for you to realize what are your non-negotiables. Certain things you want to do, certain things you're okay letting go, right? So as a professional and as a mom, what are those things which are non-negotiables? What are the things which are okay letting go,
Got
right?
it.
For
Got it.
example, with my kids, going to church every Sunday is a non-negotiable thing for me. I have to do it, right? My Sunday lunch is outside with my family, or Saturday evening we go out somewhere as a family. These are non-negotiables.
Okay. Either Sunday or Sunday. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So those are things I give priority to, and I ensure that nothing else blocks that, right? So that is so. As a professional, you need to be very clear. One thing, understand that you cannot be 100% be everywhere because you are a human.
Yeah, definitely.
Second is that now, since you can't be 100% everywhere, what are your non-negotiables? Understand that priorities and then work towards that. The other part is that I think it's very important for any working professional to have a very strong support system.
Okay, support system.
Yes. Okay. And ask for help. And the support system can be anybody.
Maybe family or
It can be a
maybe
spouse,
professional friends.
It can be your parents, it can be your in-laws, it can be your caregiver, your nanny, or it can be a great daycare next to you, right? You need to have a support system in place, right? And ask for that help. Okay, that's very important. So, and I think today's world, you have mostly both spouses working, right? And you have to support each other, right? So, I think whenever I have made a shift, and whenever I have a very difficult, time in my work, my husband slowly takes a backseat. He handles a lot of things at home. Whenever he has a very stressful time at work, I slowly take a back seat and then I kind of handle. So it's a support each other, right? Of course, your parents and in-laws, they're big
Major,
support,
yeah.
right? Like for my elder one, my mom used to pick her up after when she gets dropped off from the school. For my second one, my in-laws used to support a lot, right? I used to drop them many times at their place. So that's a big support. So ask for that help.
Got
right?
it.
So don't try to do it all. Ask for help wherever required. And third is, if you require a flexibility, if you require consideration, talk about it to your manager, right? Sometimes, you might say that I need to, maybe drop off my child in school and then start work, right? So have that transparency to your manager to say that, hey, you know what, I will start by 10 o'clock or 10:30 and I will log off accordingly, right? Or maybe you might want to step out a little time, in the afternoon, So have that understanding, to say that, I might step out half an hour, and then I will come back, right? So that transparency with your manager, because everybody has gone through this phase.
Yeah.
So ask that help, giving all the flexibility, they're willing to support as long as the deliverables are there. So having those conversations will help.
Okay, great. Yeah, I love the things what you shared, especially the support system, right? Especially the spouse is very, very important
Absolutely.
because spouse, he or she going to break your life or build your life. That's very, very things I understand. And I understand the family or professional life, but where is your me time for you? Like,
Oh yes, that's in fact a very good question. Huh? So that's what I said, right? So me time is sometimes it's what I enjoy to do,
okay,
right? So me time is for me at least it's not just like if you leave me alone in the room I get bored.
okay,
So for me, my me time is spending time with my kids and with my
okay,
family, right?
great,
So for me, that is on a Saturday, Sunday we have decided, right?
Okay.
So now there are certain things I enjoy doing. So I take time out to do that. That might be with the kids, going with them to a play area, going with the family to a good coffee shop or a good restaurant to have a dinner or a lunch. That's the that's the time I refresh myself. I feel happy. Of course, there are also days I tell my husband that I need a break. I'll just go get a quick spa and come back. And of course, those days are also there.
Great, great.
But so that's what I said. So it's all about supporting each other, right? There are times your husband also needs a break. So,
Correct, yeah.
so it's both ways.
Okay.
It's about adjusting, and the days he's tired, I take over. The days I'm tired, he takes over. So it's about that. I think that's the biggest strength. And of course, if you have your in-laws and parents with you, nothing like that.
Great, super. Thank you so much for sharing. Today we have something special on this episode. Like this is first time I'm doing in podcast. Like
Okay.
we normally, this Karan Johar coffee with Karan, right?
Coffee.
okay,
Okay.
that rapid fire, right?
Oh, so
I
I'm
want to
the-
ask you some 2-3 rapid fire questions. One word to describe HR today.
One word to describe HR today, one of the foundational blocks of an organization.
Hiring or retention, which is harder?
Hiring the right talent is harder.
Oh, is it? Okay, okay. I thought
Right
otherwise.
talent, yeah. Hiring the right talent for the right role. Because if you do that, then the retention is easier.
Great. One habit every HR leader should build.
Learning agility.
Learning.
Agility.
Okay.
So, in fact, every professional should build that. Learning agility. Because that's what is going to, because in the days to come, the world is moving so fast, right?
Great.
Technology is evolving, emerging, new things are coming up. So, I think the only thing that can keep us going is learning agility.
Okay. Great. First of all, thank you so much, Amy. It's been great. Last 60-minute amazing conversation with you, and I'm sorry that I took your family time on Saturday because normally we spend like this is what you mentioned in the podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking time and coming over here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much.
I think, the last 60 minutes, I think I've kind of refreshed a lot of things I've done in the last 11
thank you.
years.
Thank you so much.
But good initiative. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. Yeah.
Good meeting you too. Thank you so much.
Okay, please accept our sustainable brand called Rafter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming. Once
Thank
again.
you. Pleasure meeting you.
Here are my 3 takeaway from this episode. The number one is data driven. It's very important in any organization or any functional department to focus more on data, because when you have a authentic data with you, you can take a decision based on the data. Maybe last 3 years or 5 years, whatever data you have, you need to focus more on data, because all decision makes based on the data what the organization have. This is very, very important for any organization or any leader who can make the decision. The second one is boldness. It's very important to be bold, because when you have a bold, you have a privilege to take a decision. I know it's very risky. I'm not telling only positive going to happen, but when you have to take a risk with the boldness, there's a lot of changes going to happen, because the things what you want to life or in an organization you can achieve by taking bold decisions. You no need to wait for people to take approval or things. You need to be on spot. Bold decisions is very, very important. The third one is support system. It's very important for any person to have a support system, maybe family, maybe relatives, or of professional friends, or organization, or friends, whatever. And especially as a woman, very critical, because she's going to manage so many things as a family, as a professional working, and she has a as a mother role. There's a lot of other things she's going to manage, and it's very important to have a support system, as she mentioned very rightly. Her spouse or any in-laws, anyone, it's very important to have a support system in your life. If support system is set, and your life will be more easy. Whatever you want to achieve in your life, you're going to achieve in life. These are my 3 takeaway from this episode. If you like this episode, please do subscribe and share with your professional friends. See you in the next episode.